Hi, this is Sherry Trotz. I'm the Director of Business Services. I'm here to tell you today about everything you need to know to get ready for the new school year in regards to business services. The Business Services Department consists of the purchasing area, accounts payable, revenue, the warehouse, and textbooks. Today we're going to hit on some of the main areas that I believe you need the most help with. Travel, P-cards, check requests, approved vendors, contracts, fingerprinting, and fundraisers. All right, we've developed a new travel form in the summer before the 15-16 school year, and we'll probably tweak it a little bit for the 16-17 school year. Please make sure your staff uses the new form because a lot of travel requests have been coming through that's on the old form. So please make sure your secretaries aren't keeping around an old document. Something else that we're requesting is that you watch out on the time frame for when these travel reimbursements get submitted. A lot of times people hold on to their receipts and they forget about them. We're asking that they go ahead and get turned in right away, and we're asking that we can process everything within 30 business days. This is especially important at the end of our fiscal year, and if you're using any kind of grant funds that has an expiration date, we don't want people to lose out on their chance to get reimbursed, because at the end of our fiscal year, if they turn it in too late, their request will be denied, and we don't like to deny anybody's request. So if you could go ahead and get those turned in early, that'll be great. And just a reminder, those employee reimbursements, that's a separate tab in Teams that you're going to need to click and approve. So if you're not used to having to approve those, maybe you could ask your secretary to bug you after they enter them, just so you know that they're hanging out there waiting for your approval, since it is a whole separate tab that you need to check. We did change the reimbursement rates for meals for both the students and the staff. And this is just a highlight. So I wanted to make sure everybody was aware that there's a whole separate chapter in the Business Services Handbook, which is totally dedicated to travel. So please check that out. All right, these are the new reimbursement rates. We've got for staff, $46 a day. We broke it out for 8 for breakfast, 12 for lunch, and 26 for dinner. But the nice thing is that if you want to skip breakfast and have a fancier lunch, or skip lunch and have a fancier dinner, that's at your discretion. You can combine the meal prices as long as you don't exceed the maximum $46 a day. However, please note that if your hotel has a free complimentary breakfast, or if the lunch is provided at the conference, then that will be deducted from your $46 daily rate. So just please keep that in mind. Something else that we've run into a situation where some people are kind of taking advantage of the meal reimbursement. So we're asking that you please use common sense and professional courtesy in figuring out what should and shouldn't be reimbursed. For example, if you have a conference that ends at 2 o'clock in Austin, breakfast and lunch reimbursement would be appropriate and would be approved, but dinner wouldn't be. You should be able to make it home in time for dinner, even if it's 6 or 7 o'clock, then you can still eat at home. Student meals. We've got a $30 daily rate for student meals. $7 for breakfast, $9 for lunch, and $14 for dinner. If you have staff that are traveling, they also receive the student meal rate. Now, we've got some different ways that you can take care of student meals. You can either have the sponsor get a check in advance for the student meals. You can get a check made out to a specific restaurant, or you can use a travel card. If you use a travel card, we're going to need receipts from that sponsor to cover the P-card expenditures. The same thing if they use a check to pay for a restaurant, we're going to need a receipt from that restaurant. And the only time that it would be different where we don't need receipts are if the sponsor gets a check, cashes it, hands the money out to the kiddos, the kids sign for it, and then we don't need receipts from the individual kids. That money is theirs to spend then at their choice. Okay, a problem that we run into is that people don't seem to understand that we do not reimburse meals for day trips. An overnight stay is required, and that is because those are IRS rules. If you get a meal reimbursement for a day trip where there's no overnight stay, then that becomes taxable income to you. The school district doesn't want to try to keep track of what's taxable and not taxable. It would be an accounting nightmare to do so. So we just have made it a policy where we don't reimburse meals for day trips. Something else is travelers, they should carpool together. If we've got 7 teachers from the same school going to the same training session, it's not in the district's best financial interest if we reimburse everybody separately for their mileage. That's just not really fair to the district. So we're saying that everybody has to carpool together. If everybody agrees that they want to drive separate, fine, great. We'll just take the mileage and the daily rate and we'll divide it equally amongst the travelers, and that's fine with us. Now, if a traveler wants to do something special, like go to a conference a day early or stay late and travel and sightsee, that's fine, but, well, that's fine with the approval, but all those extra expenses are going to be held as personal expenses to be paid for by the traveler. Another situation we've had are not all of our hotels will accept checks. A lot of times the check actually has to be mailed in advance so it can clear the bank before the traveler arises, and I'd like to explain why. That's because our checks have a safeguard associated with them. They cannot just be cashed upon receipt. Like, for example, I think if you go to Walmart or if you go to like some doctor's offices, you write them a check, they scan it through the machine, and then they hand you back your check. Our checks do not work that way, and they will be rejected. So if you bring the check to the hotel and that's what they do, they try to run it through immediately, it will be rejected and then you'll be in trouble. So please find out from the hotel if they require if the hotel requires the check to be mailed in advance so it can clear, or if they can accept the check when you stay and just not run it through as a check, but go ahead and deposit it with a normal bank deposit. Something else that has come up is that a lot of these young teachers we have that go on trips, they don't have credit cards yet. They're just starting their own personal credit history, and some of them don't have credit cards. That's been a problem when they've tried to check into hotel rooms because the hotels require a card on file for incidentals. If that happens, normally we can just tell the hotel, turn off the phone, turn off the, lock the mini fridge, turn off the ability to charge movies, and sometimes that's acceptable to the hotel, but just wanted to make you aware of that situation that we run into. All right, we have a daily or a weekly deadline in order to get checks in and approved. So if your person needs a check for this Thursday, we need to have everything gone through the approval process and received in Teams Tuesday at 5 o'clock. And then that way we'll make sure that the check is cut in plenty of time. We do recommend that if travelers are going to go and they want an advance, like for student meals, we ask that that be processed in the form of a check. That way there's no delay in direct deposits. They can just go to the bank, cash the check, and be on their happy way. But then when they come back from the trip, if they have any kind of reimbursements, then those can be processed as direct deposits. P cards. I know not everybody has P cards, so I'll make this quick. But if you have a P card, you do need to encumber the funds to the P card in advance of your purchase. That's especially true if you're going to be using federal funds, because that's a requirement that they are approved in advance. So we have a vendor set up for JP Morgan Chase. Just have your secretary issue a requisition for JP Morgan Chase in the amount of what you're going to be purchasing for, like an open PO for, X amount of money and put the name of the store that you're going to. These P cards are in your name or your secretary's name. They cannot be shared. They cannot be signed out. It's not like the HEB card and the Sam's Club card. It's in your name. You're personally responsible, and you're not allowed to loan it to anybody. The P card process does not circumvent the requirement of using approved vendors, and you are responsible for bringing that sales tax exemption form with you when you use your P card. If sales tax shows up on the receipt, you'll be held personally responsible, and you will have to come back and bring the funds to the business office, and we'll issue you a receipt for those funds. Finally, P cards aren't to be used when you could use a normal PO, and normally in the normal daily process. It's mainly meant for like those last minute pizza parties or situations like Target, for example, no longer accepts our purchase orders, even though they're an approved vendor. Target's a great use of the P cards. Check requests. Check requests, again, they need to be submitted and approved by 5 o'clock on Tuesday for Thursday's check run. A lot of problems we've had, just to bring it to your attention, although I will hit this home with the secretaries, if you need that check on Friday, don't put Friday's date because it will not run on Thursday. If you need that check before the following check run, you need to have that check dated on Thursday. Everything up to the Thursday's date will print. If it is dated after Thursday's check run date, it will not print till the following check run date. And that's something that a lot of secretaries get confused on. They'll think, oh, I need the check for Friday for this field trip, but they use Friday's date, and then they're wondering why their check didn't print on Thursday. So I just wanted to explain that to you. That's how Teams works. Approved vendors. I know this has all been beaten to your head a million times, but again, we have to use approved vendors for all purchases. We have our own Waco ISD bids. We've got purchasing co-ops. We can piggyback other school districts' bids if we belong to the co-op with them. It's not just a simple process of adding somebody to the approved list. It's a lengthy process when we go out for bid. We have to advertise it in the newspaper once a week for 2 weeks prior to the bid opening. We have a bid opening, we evaluate the bids, we take it to the board for approval. So it's a long process, but we do these bids annually, like for special ed materials, instructional materials, Kate, our local retailers. So we have lots of opportunities for vendors to get on one of our approved lists, but we can't just add them. And another thing is we have begged some vendors to respond to our bids, and they just don't. So please understand that we can ask and ask, but we can't make them sign that bid. All right, I've also put the instructions, if you want to jot that down, on how you can find approved vendors and add it as a shortcut on your first class desktop. In the past, we had it in our intranet, and it was kind of hard to go to, and it was difficult, to log in and get in there and check and then have to do it again the next time you wanted to find an approved vendor. So we've come up with this shortcut, and it's really nice. So you can just have a little icon there on your desktop and always be able to check what our approved vendors are. Okay, contracts and contract routing. Again, last summer we developed 3 new forms. I'll probably tweak the forms a little bit this summer. So if you could just make sure you're using the most recent forms, that would be awesome. I'd like to explain the differences between the 3 forms. The first one is a routing form if the vendor has their own contract. So like the Education Service Center is a great example. They always have their own contracts. So you would use the contract agreement transmittal form to accompany their contracts. Okay, another contract that we have is for vendors who don't have their own contracts. Say, for example, you're going to have professional development, you're going to have this guest speaker come out to your campus. They don't have their own contract. We've got a generic one for them. So they can fill out this generic packet, and then that can be routed through the district for approval. The last one is for not professional services. These are like your piano tuners, your cheerleading judges, your music accompaniment for some sort of play that you're going to have. If you're going to have a seamstress, make costumes for you, those are not considered professional services, and we have a separate packet for them. So all 3 of these packets have approval routing on them. Somebody from the cabinet has to sign off on it before we can sign it. The reason we do that is just to make sure everybody's on the same page and everybody knows what's going on in regards to what happens at the campuses and within departments. Something that kind of takes a little hiccup sometimes when we're doing these contracts is if these vendors are going to have direct contact with the students, they have to be fingerprinted. It's through the same process that staff is fingerprinted when they're hired. So the DPS FACT fingerprinting process, I do verify this, and I will not sign off on a contract until they've been fingerprinted. We have all sorts of people fingerprinted, even the people that are working on the roofs in the summertime. If there's summer school going on, all those folks are fingerprinted. The copier repair guy, the Coke delivery guy, everybody's been fingerprinted. So we take it very seriously. We want to make sure that our kids remain safe. Services can't be performed until those contract routing forms are approved and a purchase order is issued. Just because you've got that contract in your hand, the secretary needs to do that purchase order to go along with it. And please keep in mind our requirements on $50,000 contracts. Those sometimes have to go to the board for approval. This slide just talks about the fingerprinting again. Sometimes people just give me when the contractors fill out the name on the contracts, they'll put the name that they go by. That's not the name that they'll be in the DPS FACT system. I'll need their legal name, and it always helps if I can get a birthday or a driver's license number, so I can help find them. Because, like, for example, Mary Smith, there's probably hundreds of Mary Smiths that have been identified, and I won't have any idea who's who. Requisitions. Again, we're only going to use our approved vendors. Don't place the order until that purchase order is received back at your campus. And I did want to stress this is regardless of funding source. It doesn't matter if it's activity funds. It doesn't matter if it's a fundraiser. It doesn't matter if you already have a contract. You need that PO first before any services are performed or goods are received. Because remember, if you buy first and then do the PO later, that's against district policy. And we don't want anybody to get in trouble for violating district policy. Fundraisers, oh yes, the necessary evil of working in school districts. We have to have fundraisers to have those extra funds to be able to do what we'd like to do for our kids. So what we've done is we have a list of approved fundraisers. The reason we did this, and I don't like to bring up bad memories, but we did have a school about 7 or 8, 9 years ago that got burned really bad on a fundraiser. The police was involved, the sheriff was involved. It basically was that we had paid for merchandise that we never received. It basically took our money and ran. So now what I do is I make sure before I approve a fundraiser company that I check their references. They have to have at least 3 school district references that are positive. If there's not enough references, then we simply don't approve them. We also aren't going to approve fundraisers where it's not worth the kids' while. If we don't get at least 30% profit on these fundraisers, I'm not going to approve them. The exception would be like if it's for the public good, like for example, Scholastic Book Fairs. There's no way they can give us 30% profit, but you know what? Having these fundraisers puts books in the hands of our kids, which is very important. So we'll go ahead and approve those. Also, an exception to having approved fundraisers would be for these restaurants that have Waco High Night or University High Night, where you go in and you mention the school and the school gets like 15% of the proceeds of all sales for that day. Those don't have to be approved because we're not doing anything. They're basically just giving us free money. So we have to use those approved fundraiser forms, okay? We have to use only approved fundraisers. Then we also have approved fundraiser forms. Now this form is definitely going to be ones that I tweaked this summer. I'll basically have it broken out into 2 different ones. Right now we just have one fundraising form. I'm going to make a second one that has things like field trip money, lost library book money, dues for being in band, things like that, where it's not really a fundraiser. You're just bringing in money and you need to get the funds deposited into your account. The reason we use these fundraiser forms is, first off, we need to make sure that it's an approved fundraising company. We also need to make sure that if it involves food, it doesn't violate any of the child nutrition rules. And we also want to make sure that we've got the right budget code listed so that we put the money in the right account. That fundraising form needs to get routed to the business services department, and once it's approved, we'll scan it back and we'll send it to the principal, the secretary, and the sponsor. That way everybody knows it's been approved. Once you get that fundraising form back, again, before you order anything, you need to do a purchase order. Now, the problem that we had in the past was that people said, well, it takes money to make money. They couldn't do a fundraiser because they didn't have any money in their account in which to buy the goods to conduct the fundraiser. So we're doing things a little bit different now. Once you fill out that fundraising request form, we're going to preload your account with your expected profit. That way, you'll have the money to spend to buy the goods in order to resell to make more money. So that's great. And then what happens then is that after the fundraiser is over, we'll tweak your accounts for what was actually received. If you made more than what you thought, great, we'll add more money to your account. If you didn't quite make as much as you thought, then we're going to deduct some money away. One thing that's real tricky is sales tax. Okay, sales tax is required on taxable sales. Now, we do have some variances to that. Any campus and any bona fide student group are allowed 2 tax-free days a year. Please remember, that's bona fide student groups. Those are the 865 funds, not the 461 funds. Most schools use the yearbooks as their one of their tax-free days. Something that not everybody understands is even if you sell something at cost and don't plan to make a profit, it's still subject to sales tax. So for example, t-shirts. If you buy t-shirts for the kids for field day and you sell them at cost, you're actually going to lose money on that transaction because we have to pay comptroller's office sales tax. So please note, take that into consideration when you calculate the price that you're going to charge the kids. Now, our student activity handbook has examples of taxable sales and non-taxable sales, so if you're not sure, check the handbook. Something else that came up this year is receipts. We found out not all teachers were giving their kiddos receipts when they turned in money. This is just important to protect the teacher as well as to protect the student. Anytime money changes hands, somebody should be given a receipt. Again, this slide is just talking about what I've already discussed about we're going to audit the fundraising recap, make sure all the funds have gone to the right account, because we had problems in the past where some sponsors were very upset because they felt that not all of their deposits were posted correctly to their account, and we actually audit them now, and we make sure that all the deposits that the person, the bookkeeper or the secretary has noted on that fundraising recap form that the sponsor has signed off on, we make sure all of those get posted to the right account. So there should never be a situation where the football team gets baseball team's money or the junior class gets the senior class's money. So hopefully we will never have any more problems because we actually audit them. So thank you for your time. I know I just gave you a ton of information. And again, this was just highlights. So please, if you have any questions on anything specifically that I covered, please call me or email me. I'll be glad to help you. And have a great school year. This is going to be a good one. I just know it.